Call to order the 892nd special meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD27. Roll call.
Keith Jandro.
Here.
Isabel Logan.
Here.
Abigail Fuller.
Here.
Toby Jandro. Here. Barry Willett. Here. Gary Sibley.
Here.
Sarah Ashley.
Here.
And I see that our two student reps, Gabby and Caitlin, are connecting in Zoom.
Any adjustments to the agenda?
I do not have any adjustments, but I would like to welcome Abigail Fuller. Abigail has been appointed by the Town of New Canada to fill in with Jake's departure. Abby is a 2016 graduate of Community High School, and I told her you would all be very nice to her. So do that. Welcome, Abby.
Thank you.
Public participation. No one signed up. Approval of minutes for the 890th meeting, December 12th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Approval of minutes for the emergency meeting 891 on December 30th.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent.
The first thing I have for you is some DOE news and updates. The Department of Ed has notified us that the federal government eased their timeline restrictions on our CRF funds. I wish we would have known that a little bit earlier because we were on track. There were a few projects though that we were getting concerned about. Some of them dealing with our various technology upgrades, specifically from Third Eye Global, and then also our locker room project here at CHS. Now we have an extension. It's actually till the end of 2021, but they're looking to have all projects done by June 30th, and I should say 2021, and then invoicing by September 30th, so they can close out their end by the end of the year. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility. We also learned that through the new stimulus package, Maine schools are going to have their share of the education allocation, and we're expecting an allocation in this new, what they're calling ESSER 2, to be about 4 times the size of our ESSER 1. ESSER 1 was the original CARES Act that we got back in April, I believe, and we had a $193,000 allocation. So things point to that being quadrupled. The good news about this allocation is that we'll have till 2023 to use the funds. So these are more long-term planning things, and I'm hopeful that given the nature of remote learning and how that's probably going to be something more long-term, hopefully we can look at some long-term planning around staffing specific to remote learning, because we have met a lot of our needs with immediate technology and safety. Now we can start to look at that. So we'll discuss as we go once we get the allocation, and then we'll definitely welcome the board's suggestions on our best way to use those allocations over the 2-year period. For the superintendent's meeting last Thursday, we did talk about the ESSER allocations. We talked about vaccinations. Right now, the priority for the DOE is getting all school nurses vaccinated. I do believe that our school nurses have been vaccinated with their first shot, and that was through Northern Maine Medical Center. For staff, for education staff, all indications point to the group 1B, which is where educators lie to be. The vaccinations become available mid-February, early March, although the Governor Mills administration did announce today that they're taking some of those 1B folks, especially those who are aged 70 and above, and younger with underlying health conditions, and trying to address it now. So that may move up our timeline, hopefully. So right now, what our school nurses are doing, they're gathering data specific to our staff, numbers of people who are going to want the vaccination so that when it becomes readily available, we can quickly tell the DOE or whoever is distributing, this is how many we need, and we can get that ball rolling rather quickly. I know a lot of our education staff is looking forward to that announcement, and so we hope that comes sooner than later. Also, we talked about the color coding designations. As you all know, Aroostook County on December 28th was still coded as a green county with an asterisk. And the asterisk means that we're being closely monitored because of the spike in increases for our county. We are still the 6th lowest county in Maine for the positivity rate, but because we climbed so quickly to that 6th mark from virtually the last place, we do have that designation. I believe the new color code is either coming out, I believe it's coming out Friday. So we'll know more Friday about what the state has decided for Aroostook County. ED279s, that's our state funding. I did share with you the governor's budget proposal, which does add more funds for education, which is good news. That will be applied to the ED279 so that we can see our numbers. Of course, decreasing student enrollment, for various factors, including homeschooling this year and some other factors, valuation of communities, that's all in place. So we hope to know what our numbers are by the end of the month. That they're promising before the end of January. And that's all I have for DOE news. Any questions? The next item I have for superintendent is earned pay leave. Now Maine has passed a new law, the earned pay leave law, that went into effect January 1st. Under the law, private and public employers with at least 10 employees in Maine must provide their employees with 1 hour of paid leave for every 40 hours worked, with a maximum of 40 hours paid leave per year for any reason. We do suspect that schools were overlooked when they were pushing this law through, because now under the law, we must offer earned paid leave to our substitute teachers, the very people we bring in to take over for the people who are gone. We now have to give time away to, and our athletic coaches are going to earn paid leave, and we're not quite sure how that's all going to work. Right now, anyone under a current bargaining agreement, which is our teachers, our ed techs, our teamsters, the law does not apply to them until their bargaining agreement expires. That's to give time for us to negotiate how the law is going to play into their time. As you know, take the teachers, for example, we give teachers 2 personal leave and 14 sick days, or 15 sick days every year. So we already give 17 days. The law is for 40 hours, which is 8 days. It's just how we now rename some of those 17 days as earned pay leave days. So those personal days will probably go away, and those will definitely be earned pay leave, but we may have to trade some sick days for earned pay leave. It actually gives the employees some more flexibility than before. They can actually take time off on an hourly basis instead of quarter day, half day increments. But it does make things interesting. Lucy, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, you've summarized it really well. The only difference in sick leave versus earned paid leave is earned paid leave can be used basically as a personal day. It can be used for any reason at any time. But if it's a planned leave, they have to give notice. But if it's an emergency leave, they can just let us know. Whereas a sick day, you can only use when you're ill. So it does provide more flexibility to the employee.
Is this a use it or lose it scenario where at the end of the year, if they haven't used it at the end of the school year?
The law provides that EPL must carry forward. However, if it carries forward, the next year they can only ever earn 40 hours in 1 year. So our plan is to let them carry it forward as sick leave or vacation leave, depending on which leave we converted to EPL, so that the employee never has less leave than what they currently have.
our non-bargaining agreement folks, like our administrators and our central office staff, have already been converted. So that's already been done in our financial system. So now when I log in, I see less vacation days, but that's been transformed over to EPL days. It's the same, it's equivalent, it's just in hours versus days. So we're already adhering to the law for those who began on January 1st. And I did provide a link in the electronic version of the superintendent notes if you guys want to read more about that. Any questions on that? Remote learning update. I do have our building administrators here. We also have a couple of teachers here if you would like to ask them any questions as well. But if I could have maybe Mr. Neto start talking, just informing the board about how things are going with remote learning at Fort Elementary School.
Well, just to kind of go back to the spring, I feel like it really felt like we were building that car as we drove a little bit, with everybody learning all the technology, the kids learning it, the parents learning it at home. Very, very big difference this year in terms of the kids. We were able to teach the kids how to use the pieces of software that they need to be able to use before they went out of the world. Teachers, a lot more consistency with teachers in terms of what they're using and what they're sending out. So much better experience this time in terms of what we're using, our consistency in what we're using, and then the kids' ability to use it. Some of the challenges is, I would say in the spring, a lot of people went home from work. So a lot of those kids that were at home, kids that are younger kids, they had somebody at home to help with the facilitating of learning. This time, a lot less people are at home from work. So that's been a little bit of a struggle in terms of teacher schedules, be able to meet up with parents or discuss things with parents. But overall, much more positive experience, but still challenges with remote learning.
Thank you, Mr. Fletch.
Yeah, pretty much mirror what Mr. Neto had to say. It's just going quite well. And actually, our attendance, like say this year at CHS, before remote learning was about 91%. And during remote learning, we're actually percent higher, 92%. Of course, that's less days, but it just shows you how much buy-in. Our teachers have done a wonderful job of really learning their technology and learning how to do remote. It's a learning curve. And I think we got the bugs out last spring, and this fall, this winter, I should say, it's been awesome. Kids have been participating. We keep a little list of kids that are, maybe that have lost a little contact, and our guidance service and administration are kind of keeping up, and as well as the teachers trying to get in touch with these kids to kind of get them back in. But overall, we're in good shape. We've got after this week, 3 weeks left at the end of the semester, and very promising with what a remote did. So the money, the days, as I said last year, the days at the end of the year really helped, to prep us. And the kids, I think the teachers doing such a good job on keeping the kids there, as well as our schedule changes that we've made this year. It's a lot easier to follow. They have about 3 core classes each day instead of trying to put all 6 into it last year. So we learned a lot last year, and this year it's really paying off.
I don't know if the board wanted to ask any of the teachers in the room questions specific to remote learning. I have to put you guys on the spot.
But you're here.
So you guys have anything you want to share? Thoughts, feelings?
I think right now, like today, I went home for the first time since March, feeling good. Today was a good day. Like everybody showed up, engaged, and I was like, I'm a little nervous for Tuesday because we have hit stride. You know what I mean? We have hit stride, and it's been really positive. The kids show up on time, literally within 30 seconds. I got 22 kids on my screen, video is on, and I'm like, this is better than in the school. And that was today. I'll take today for today. Do you know what I mean? But it's a big difference from the spring, like Robbie said, for me anyway, mentally, and just doing my job well. You know what I mean? So.
Thank you.
I teach 4th grade, if anybody doesn't know, but we find that this is a lot better than it was in the spring, definitely for sure. We worked really hard at the beginning of the school year to prepare the kids to be able to go remote. So we like front loaded all that technology that they needed so that if we ever did go remote. But same as Margaret, you know, within 2-3 minutes, all of our kids are on, their videos are on. We really have very few that don't show up on time. If they do, you know, a quick hangout message or Facebook to their parents or something like that, and they're on quickly. So I feel like in the winter, fall, whenever we went, spring, I guess, last year, whenever we went remote, learning kind of like stopped, and we just kept them where they were as best as we could without really pushing them forward. And I feel like this time, no learning has stopped. Like we've introduced new standards, we've taught new standards, we've tested new standards, all since we've been remote. So whereas before we just were trying to hold them there and not let them slide back, now I feel like we've learned enough that we're really moving forward. And I do know that from colleagues that it's different at the pre-K to 2 level because they have less like ability to do it themselves, but everybody has learned so much. So, going back.
Any questions? With that, it's a good segue into what our plan is now that we're nearing the 2-week point out of the holiday break. And as you all know, we had met with Dr. Roberts, school nurses, back on December 28th to discuss the plan moving forward. And at that time, it was agreed that a 2-week period to see what was happening after the holiday break, get a good idea, figure out close contacts of positivity, and then transition into a hybrid model was a good plan. We met again this Monday. Dr. Roberts gave about an hour of her time to meet with union leadership and discuss that plan. I did share that video out to all of you. If you haven't watched it, I would suggest that you do. Dr. Roberts was really did a good job in trying to explain, you know, why kids need to be in school and how schools are simply not a super spreader as we once feared that they may be, because people are gathering in large quantities. And the fact that we're starting with a hybrid model, which ensures 6-foot distancing, which is the maximum, or not the maximum, but the ideal social distancing required, along with our hand hygiene, our masking, and everything else that we're doing. She's felt very strongly that it is what's best for kids, it's what's best for families, and we can do that safely because schools have proven to be safe. I do have Nurse Monique on Zoom. If you have any questions specific to what was discussed from a medical standpoint, I too am nervous about Tuesday because anytime you go from one thing that's unknown to something new, it's always going to be a source of anxiety. But I also know that as much as our teachers are rocking out remote learning, these kids are still behind a screen and they need some interaction with one another. And this is why we've spent so much money on safety protocols. This is why we spent so much money on technology to deliver to those who know they can't return. We still have remote learning as an option to those who know they can't return. This is why we have all this in place so that we can take medical advice and make a sound decision based on what's best for everyone. And in the event that something happens and we have positivity in our school, we know we can go back to remote and we can do so without missing a step. But we're hopeful that, you know, that what we've seen and what Dr. Roberts has shared with us for data is going to really be the way to move forward. So I don't know if the board has any questions for Nurse Monique, anything to discuss with regards to that plan.
I've got one question about, I don't see a recommended motion here, so it doesn't look like we're gonna be voting on it.
You guys have the right to vote on any time.
Okay. And from the Monday's discussion with the union, it didn't look like it looked like the decision had already been made. I guess I just wanted to know when the decision was made, who was at the table.
So when we originally shared the plan, as I explained a while ago, it was based on the meeting with Dr. Roberts, the school nurses, and they came with their recommendation that we formulated that plan.
And that was back in the December
December
28th.
28th, yeah.
What's been the response from the teaching staff?
Teachers are nervous. They're nervous. And you get a different flavor for that across different grade levels. And I don't want to speak for, a majority or whatever. From those who I've spoken to from the younger grade levels, they recognize that remote is not doing justice. So I think for them, it's important to get kids back. Whereas from a high school level, kids are following their schedule remotely, it's working. And so I think here, it's a different tone where, like, as Margaret said, they're doing it. What's hard is that if you send some students back and not some other students, and trying to navigate those waters with the feeling that teachers will have about their own safety. Why is it good for us but not for the others? I'm nervous about that. So we kind of have to lump everyone in the same, use our medical advisors to guide us with what we know, what they know to be the facts, and then move forward from there. But no, teachers are definitely nervous. Administrators are nervous. I'm nervous.
So in reading the plan, one of my questions is we used to have an objective outside source that we would use as a guidepost. If I read the new plan correctly, we no longer use an objective outside source. We disregard community spread.
No, what we're doing is we're relying on the state of Maine's community spread, their color coding system.
Yeah.
Because that, we know, the hospitals are reporting data to the CDC and they're using accurate data. What we can't rely on anymore is our own St. John Valley case count, because when that was below 10, it was easy to figure out. Now it's no longer easy anymore, especially when you add antigen testing at Walgreens, false positives, false negatives that are not being reported to the hospital or the CDC. So the fear was, if we try to use that as a benchmark, we'd be using false data, no matter how you look at it. So the advice was to look at what's happening in our schools and our families of school-age children, and use that as our measuring post about, because that's the data we do know.
So procedurally, as far as if a parent's watching from home,
Yep.
When the state goes to yellow, then that's the signal that we are going to be changing.
Yep.
Okay, it's not going to be from us, it's going to be from the state.
Well, it's still from us because schools have the choice. As a board, you have the choice to say, no, we don't want to do what the state is advising us to do. We ought to do this, and then you have the right to do that. And then as a school, we are still going to monitor closely what's happening in our school, so that if we do have a positivity rate in our school, if a classroom now has 2 or 3 impacted students, well, that's our flag to say, okay, we've got to move to this model. And that was a part of our original plan as well. But what we can't do now is say, if it's, between 7 and 13, we're going to do this, or if it's, we don't know those numbers anymore. So it becomes very difficult. We can still get a gauge based on, because it's a small community, so we know when something happens at nursing home A or hospital B, or, we can do that and then make it. And then I think we did that for the, for the plan to stay as a remote learning coming out. And we'll still continue to do that. But what I can't say honestly with a straight face is say, this is what our St. John positivity rate is. I don't know that. And Dr. Roberts was honest about that too. She says, she doesn't know that.
So when we started, we had the original plan that we set forth. Do we have something akin to that that's available to the public to kind of see like what our triggers are, what our benchmarks are, what our high water marks are, like kind of what we're watching, so if people are paying attention from home, they can kind of see how things are going. I think that's I know it's not intentional, and I'm not trying to fight.
Oh, no.
But I think the perception is that this was a Star Chamber decision, and we got it, and nobody understood it. And I don't think it's because it's intentionally being hidden. I don't understand it. I'm having a hard time to see it.
Yeah, so
So I think it'd be nice if there was some real transparency, not like here's what we're going to be doing tomorrow, but this is what we're doing going forward. If A happens, this is our response. If B happens, this is our response.
Yep.
That's all.
no, and I appreciate the question, and I think our current plan still is intact. So our current plan still does say, this is what happens with the counties. And we're clear on that. And like I told you guys a while ago, if a Aroostook County gets put into a yellow designation, you can come back and say, no, we're more comfortable staying green, or we're more comfortable going red. I wouldn't advise you to do that. I would kind of say, hey, if the state's telling you to do something, stick with it. But with regards to our local case count, we did drop numbers and put words like low, moderate, and high or new. What's difficult for people and this is still what Dr. Roberts is kind of using as a guide, but moderate to a fourth grade teacher and moderate to a health advisor are going to be different. And so I have to trust what the health advisor is telling me versus what we perceive as to be moderate or high. If you ask a lot of people locally, they'll all say we have a high spike of cases because we were so low before. But when you compare us to Cumberland, we're still so very low. So it's hard to use those things. So we can make this a little more refined, Toby, to kind of smooth the waters over a little bit. But I think what's most important is this final column here, which has always been part of our plan, active school cases. That's our trump. You know, that trumps everything else. If we have positivity in schools, then we can no longer say schools are safe. And that's what Dr. Roberts was speaking to, that right now schools are safe. Every case that we have that's positive right now did not happen in school. So that's a good thing. I don't know if that helps.
Ben, how many Aroostook County schools are in remote?
Us, Valley Unified and Mars Hill just went in because they had a local business or nursing care facility outbreak.
When you earlier said that remote is still available, is that like if like you said, like you mentioned a fourth grade teacher versus a medical, but like a mom's perspective is super nervous.
Yep.
Can she continue with remote until, and like I know it was quarterly and 7 months in 2 weeks, but like for this next 2 weeks, if they're freaked out, they can stay with remote?
I'll let the principals tell you what they're doing to address those. So I don't know, Mr. Coletta, if you want to, if a parent right now is requesting remote because they don't want to go back to hybrid next week.
Right, so what we're doing is we're taking it on a case by case basis. We haven't advertised that, but we've had people call. And then what we'll do is we'll take a look at your child's record and how well they've done in remote. We'll say, well, sure, your child has done well in remote. If you feel that this is best for your child, that's fine. You know, and then let's say they haven't done well in remote. We'll just say, hey, they haven't done well in remote. We recommend that, you know, you come to school, but, you know, once again, this is your decision, it's your parent. And then we've started a list of students right now.
Mr. Neto?
So right now, we do have a list of students whose parents have called and requested remote. We have asked for a third quarter commitment for that. Part of the reason for that is depending on the numbers that we do have requested remote, we may have to shuffle some of our staff around in order to meet those needs. What we don't want to have happen is, you know, a week from now, people are a little bit more comfortable coming into school, and then all of a sudden we have a staff member that we've asked to teach remotely, create a classroom, get everything ready for this. and then, oh, all of a sudden there's no need for it, now she's back in the classroom, getting things ready for her classroom. So I didn't think that would be fair to staff. Although we do want to have that remote option for people who maybe they don't feel that kids are safe coming to school, or the conversations that I've had are people don't want to have their students coming into school to make it another safe environment. It's not that they don't feel safe at school, it's they want to make sure school stays safe, depending on job.
I mean, I think as a board member, we should keep that as an option until, like, the board decides otherwise. Like, I think a lot of parents are really afraid that, I've had a couple calls saying, I'm reading these things and it says we're not going to be doing remote anymore. And they're freaking out for various reasons. Either they're living with a grandparent who's immunocompromised, not saying that, good reasons. And I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening. But I understand reading between the lines and the uncertainty that that's what they're inferring.
Yeah.
So I guess I would just make a motion. I move that we allow the option of remote pursuant to what Mr. Coletta and Mr. Robbie are doing, Mr. Neto, are doing, until the board is asked to do otherwise.
And that's already part of your plan. Your plan says, your board approved plan says we will have remote learning available for those who need it.
Okay. I just want to make sure it doesn't change unless we vote to change it.
No, and we would not change it on your behalf. If you want to keep remote learning for the next, I think the state of Maine's going to mandate us to keep it.
Okay. Yeah. I was just looking to make people feel better.
If you want to make a motion, that's fine. That would be fine. It's our. We are not saying we can't do remote anymore for people.
And I really like that you're doing that, John. I think that's a great idea.
You good?
I made myself some notes because I get a lot of phone calls. I think I have no interest in doing this personally, but I know it might not be a bad idea, and this is just me speaking as a board member. There's a lot of information that came in from Dr. Roberts and whatever, and I think I would feel better if we maybe had some board buy-in, like a subcommittee on COVID. So when the meetings happen, we can kind of hear it. So when people are like losing their minds at us, sometimes happens, or when they just have good questions, we'll know that it was discussed. And if it wasn't discussed, we can bring it forward to the group. As I said, I'm already on like 3 different committees. I have no interest, but I guess I would suggest that we have at least 1 or maybe 2 board members available to speak at those discussions when they're happening. How does the board feel about that?
Would an easy solution, instead of making another committee, be every time one of those meetings occurs, I reach out to you and say, is there anybody who would like to sit in on the meeting, and then just open it up to all of you, because you're all busy.
I don't care.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So I'll do that. As long as, 5 of you don't say yes.
Don't worry.
No, Josh,
It's hard to get people to do anything.
And remember, board members, you're going to get tough questions. Feel free to refer those individuals to me. That's my job, and I know you don't mind fielding those, but encourage folks to call the superintendent or call the principal, or call the school nurse, and then we'll work through it with them. Go on, Mr. Chairman? Yes. Winter sports updates. So currently, while in a remote model, our coaches are sharing workout plans. They're Zooming with kiddos. They're urging, kids to access, practices this way rather than this way, and that's all totally fine. And that's perfectly great. But what we had in mind, and this is something that you can all decide whether it's a good plan or not. We're of the mindset, when I say we, I'm speaking primarily with Mr. Doucette and Mr. Coletta right now at the moment about athletics. We feel that when students do return to school next week, we should open athletics back up so that they can begin preparing and getting ready. A lot of the schools in Aroostook have begun that, and they're actually starting games now. We're only a week or so behind, so it's not, we're not so far behind, but we feel that it would be best to move forward with sports. And reminding our coaches about their own guidelines with cohorting and all of those things and face masking, so they'd be following their own protocols. But just because we're in a self-imposed hybrid doesn't mean we can't offer sports. If Aroostook shifts us into a hybrid, then all of Aroostook has to stop. But our own self-imposed hybrid, we can choose to do that if we feel that's right. And that's our plan unless you don't feel comfortable with that.
So we're talking both practices and games.
Yep. Games and meets would be restricted to just Aroostook County, and we would not go play any school that is in a remote model. So of Mars Hill right now is remote. They may be remote next week. We wouldn't go play Mars Hill for that week.
So the cohort days, do cohort A only practice on cohort A days, cohort B only go on B days?
We would have the teams form their own after-school cohorts and allow them to play together.
Okay. Because if you're gonna have a game, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
Only allow half the team to go to the game.
Had I thought of it, I would have thought maybe to put our athletes in the same cohort, but it's too late.
Right. Oh, come on.
Yeah. Does that sound okay to the board?
Is wrestling going?
Wrestling. Yeah. Mr. Neto is actually on the wrestling committee. What's the latest update on wrestling?
We have to wait until things go down in the state. I would say the committee's not that confident, but they did release some information regarding some return to play guidelines for wrestling. But the confidence of a season happening is low, but we're still hopeful that, but it's only going to be later this spring, if at all.
So the NPA moved away from their just no handshaking rule?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Neto was a high school wrestler. I just thought I'd share that with the board.
So how the outfit?
We're here right now?
I have a question, but I'm struggling. Oh, it wasn't a question, it was a comment. I think students are better behaved about following policies and procedures when there's adults around supervising. Like at practice, as opposed to just out doing stuff on their own.
I agree. We good with sports?
Yes.
The next item I have is remote learning support for children of MSAD20 staff. Prior to reintegrating, we did put out a survey, and I believe you have a copy of that teacher survey, return to school. And one of the questions in that survey was specific to their own children. And that's question 3. It says, regardless if students are in school or not, if mandated by the district to teach from your classroom this fall, would child care for your own children be a concern? And we did have upwards of 30, if you count all the individuals, almost 40% of our staff saying, yeah, that's going to be a problem for me, because they all remember being mom and teacher from their living room, kitchen last spring, which I'm sure was super easy. It wasn't easy at all. So we knew that we had to do something in order to allow our staff to be employees when they're here, and then have something for their children. We are not a licensed daycare, so we do not offer childcare for the children of staff. What we offer is for staff to bring their children to school so that they, mom and dads, can go work in their classroom, and their children have a place to work on their own schoolwork according to their own remote learning plans. This is facilitated or overseen by a collection of different ed techs in our temporary support personnel who rotate in and out and monitor. They have actually like a daily schedule where, you know, this hour is math time, this hour is reading time. They're not receiving direct instruction. It's not like they're coming to school to be taught by teachers or ed techs. They still have to go Zoom in with their teacher at their Zoom time, and they have to do the work from their packets the same as they would at home. It's just that mom's not at home. And so we felt that offering this to our employees would ensure that our employees could do what we're asking them to do, which is part of why the response from teachers now is that this is so much better than it was in the spring, because they can be teaching during their teaching time. So I know that some of you have received questions. Mr. Sibley did call me, about this very same thing, and I explained it to him as well. This was part of our plan to offer this for our staff. And it's been working really, really well. I have to commend our educational technicians that are helping with this. They're really excited about being able to contribute this way. The staff, the moms and dads that have taken advantage of this can't say enough about how much it's meant to them. And I believe we have some of those moms here that if you would like to ask a question to, again, I'm sure they would share with you their own personal feelings. If you want.
I don't know, I think it's an awesome idea, and I think more employers should do it.
Yeah, and I'll totally testify to this. I have 3 small children. And on the eve of, it was December 6th, the eve of December 7th, and I was crying in my house, writing a letter to quit. Like, I can't do it. And I brought my 3 kids to work the next day. I brought the pack and play, I brought the crib, my 2-year-old and my little kids, and we set up camp, yoga mats, and I did it. For 2 days I did that in my classroom, in this building. And I was like, I can't do this. This is impossible. I cannot be what I signed my contract for and what I signed my contract for. Do you know what I mean? It was, and the privilege of the service is like amazing. It's amazing. And I think we lean into the benefits of our employers a lot, right? Whether it's free tuition at UMFK if you work there, or reduced prescriptions at the hospital. We lean into that so much. And this was like a benefit out of left field. You know what I mean? And I scooped it up, and it is like, I'm the teacher again, and I'm really good at my job right now. Like that wasn't happening since March. And so I really hope that it stays. I know that it's a privilege, and I will never take that for granted. You know what I mean? And like we're laughing in our Zooms, and I'm happy again, and I'm like, this is a breakthrough, and I really am thankful that it mobilized so quickly. And my kids come home happy. Their work is done. They Zoom in on their own. They've been trained by amazing teachers to do this on their own. You know what I mean? The ed techs are making sure nobody dies. Okay? And I'm so thankful for this. Like, I don't even know what I would do right now. I wouldn't be working right now. You know what I mean? Like, we were at that point. We were at the tipping point, And so it quickly mobilized, and my kids are taken care of while I do my job, which is a huge benefit that my employer made happen out of thin air. You know what I mean? So I'll take it when it's here. I'll take the good days when they come, and they're coming a lot now. You know what I mean? So thanks for making it happen. So.
And just so you know, the details around it, it's only for elementary age children. So pre-K to grade 6, after that, we were not having the older students participate in that. We felt they're old enough to be able to manage themselves at home. And that's worked well. We've had some requests to have some 7th and 8th and 9th graders volunteer. We don't want to mix the cohorts that way, so we've said no, politely. And we don't take kids who would normally be in childcare, so we don't take, below pre-K, and now where the childcare we don't offer that as well. It's just for elementary age kids. Sam?
I mean, I'd just like to echo that. I'm so grateful that this has come around for us. I'm in a bit of a different position. I think most of you know me. I'm the clinical social worker at the middle and the high school. And so as it relates to the confidential nature of my job, it was not good last year, you know. I'm so fortunate that I have wonderful kids, but my 6- and 8-year-old completely raised themselves at the end of the year because I had to be in a completely different place. You know, because I hold our students' confidentiality, you know, to strict guidelines. And so just to know that I can be in my office doing my job and my kids are happy and healthy and doing their work and they know what they're doing. I have a 6- and a 9-year-old and they know exactly what they're doing and they're just doing their thing over there. And I'm just so grateful. That among other things, like I'm reaching way more students than I did last year. So I think all around, as a social worker, I just feel like I'm able to do my job much better. And that's for numerous reasons, but a big part of it is having this available support.
I kind of feel, you know, the same way. If I think back to March and April, even May, I was kind of failing both as a mom and as a teacher because I couldn't do both at the same time. And I really struggled hard. And so whenever we heard that we were going back to remote, my husband and I actually had a discussion about what we were going to do and if I was going to continue teaching because I couldn't, I chose to be a teacher, but I also chose to be a mother. And I didn't feel like I could do one well while trying to do both. So this was really like a godsend. I'm not from here. I don't have family. They can't go to Memes. I don't have Aunt Lisa down the road. Like I have no one. So I have wonderful in-laws that work, but I don't have just anybody that can take care of my kids. I don't have a plethora of family. I don't even have a plethora of friends really. I mean, moved up here as an adult. So, I mean, when you think about it, like I didn't have anybody. So it was either teach and take care of my kids. I couldn't do both. So this was really like the answer to my prayers. Being able to bring my kids here. And I mean, I teach one of my kids. I have a 4th grader and I teach 4th grade, but I teach him much better over Zoom than I ever do when he's sitting next to me. So just knowing that they go to school, they do all their work, they get everything done. And then at home, I still get to be a mom. And that really, I'll take it if it's offered. I'll hold on to it as long as I can, and I really, 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 truly appreciate you doing this for us. I know a lot of moms and dads that have kids that take advantage of this, really appreciate it, and we're very thankful for it.
So after the 19th or whenever teaching changes, what changes there?
So when we move into hybrid, their children on their non-school day will still go into hybrid support. So they still go to school every day, but one day they go to their classroom, the other day they go to their support room as they have been.
I also kind of want to speak to the health side of this, because enrolling my kids, I was like, this is a godsend, but I'm still nervous, right? And so in a way, I think it's acted as this like small pilot group to see, is it really spread in school, right? So they're really spread out, they're doing their thing, they're kind of just what will happen on Tuesday, essentially. And it kind of echoes what Dr. Roberts is saying is they're doing okay. Do you know what I mean? Like they made it through the pilot phase, and I think that's how it's going to go Tuesday. So that gives me a little like peace of mind, even though I'm still nervous. Do you know what I mean? So in a way, I guess it's working. Like it might just work. The plane might get off the ground here. So it's helped me kind of process the health angle, you know.
Anyone else have any comments?
How many teachers are taking advantage of that program?
You know how many
What was the question?
teachers are taking advantage? I think it might be easier if you say how many children
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, we have 50+ kids.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I believe when we gathered the data about our staff children, we looked at it and said like a fifth of our total population is like staff children. It's amazing. So
We have 14 4th graders that are staff students.
Wow.
Yeah, the concerns that came from the public were, you know, like you guys said, just
stressed out parents working, trying to balance everything, and the perception that, well, why are the teachers' kids there?
Yeah,
And
I
the
get
head
that.
tech's
It's not
teaching
fair.
them, and
You know what I mean?
so-
It's not, but we're doing our job. You know what I
I
mean?
wish every workplace.
I like that.
I know, I know.
Parents would do the same thing.
I do too.
And one thing we've been very important to stress is that the kids that are here, that are with us at FKS right now, they're staff kids, but we're not allowing them really to have any added benefit from being at school on those extra days. So we've had some teachers say, well, can I take this student? The question is, if they were home doing remote, would you be asking them to do an individual Zoom? The answer is yes, then work with them. The answer is no, and it's just convenient because they're here, then we're not gonna have an added educational benefit just because they're staff. So we've been very, very adamant and very stressing that issue.
And we just wanted to put it on the agenda to get it out there for the public so they would understand how it was working, what it was working.
Thank you. You have administrator reports. You should have one from Mr. Doucette. You should have one from
Mr. Coletta.
Mr. Coletta, excuse me, Mr. Neto, Mr. Soche, and then you should have a chart of interesting facts from our investor department, Mr. Kelly. If you had questions about those that you wanted to ask those administrators.
Have any questions?
I do.
Sarah?
I just have a question. Hey, John, on the warrior time and the wind time, I feel like I'm always asking this question. The wind time was what I need time. Is that, in the beginning, I guess I thought that was like helping kids get up to speed on stuff that they've missed. And then the kids who aren't missing any targets were going to be challenged. Is that time getting used still?
Yeah, incredibly,
Okay.
incredibly well. Yeah, it's, it's each day, since our schedule is morphed throughout the year, we've kind of gone back to 2 o'clock. We tend to take, that was originally a block of time, the same as any other class, close to 80 minutes. And, that was done for the, the first part of the year, which came in, kids were able to catch up on whatever they had. And then, once we went to 2 o'clock, we were able to squeeze time out of that instead of other classes. So one day it's a half an hour, the other day it's about 40 minutes or so. Okay, and right now, teachers set up a one-to-one Zooms with their kids, the kids that are really having a tough, tough time making it work, catching them up, getting them, doing whatever, time like in math where you really need that one-on-one, they're able to do that with their kids during that wind time. It's either on, I think it's a green day, it's at the end of the day, and white day, it's the beginning of the day. And then at warrior time is at lunch. So right now, right around lunch, there's about 70 minutes, and 25, I should say, so about 50 minutes of that is warrior time. And so kids, the teachers will eat during that time right now, and they also do, a lot of those one-on-ones. Okay, so it's been very effective. Maybe Martha can.
Yeah, I have a wind time. So wind time, I call it my housekeeping time. So like, we meet as a group, they log in, and I kind of like give the rundown, like, okay, Tuesday, here's what Tuesday's gonna look like, because everybody know what group they're in. I do it like, it's like the mom, the hen comes out to me, and everybody, then we kind of go through all their classes, like, what do you have, Mr. Sidney, who has Mr. Sidney stuff, we're kind of like, kind of of what to do, do you know what I mean? So we have, the first 5 minutes is kind of just like kumbaya, you know what I mean? Then there's this breakaway where, okay, you're good, you can go see this teacher, I'm keeping you on the line, buddy, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's this kind of this independent time. Then they can also kind of zoom over to another teacher if they need help. So I do find the wind time very helpful. It gives me time to kind of just do some housekeeping things up front, and then there's this breakaway phase. So,
Mr. Coletta, correct me if I'm wrong, we had more students at the high school taking online courses this fall than we've seen in a long time. Am I right with that?
That's true. Yeah.
So I know a lot of kids were taking advantage of doing an extra class during their wing time, and it was a college course online.
Yeah, we're having quite a bit more. I think we got 12 or 13, I can't remember which number. Right around that number of sophomores taking early college classes. So, before that was pretty much, we have juniors and seniors during the early college, high school, Whitman Street Academy, okay, now it's called Valley U. And now we've got a lot more sophomores doing that as well. So it's, if they're not part of that Valley U, they're taking online classes, 1 or 2 semester. We actually sent it up today with, we're having sign-ups for online classes by the 19th. You hear that out there in TV land, sign up by the 19th.
Committee reports.
And I just put this item here, negotiation committee, we are going to enter teacher negotiations eventually in the near future. And I know there's been conversation in past negotiations that we always show up to day one and we receive something from the other party, but we've never had a chance to sit and say, well, this is what we think. So I wanted to know from the negotiations committee if you felt like that would be a good use of a pre-negotiating meeting to talk about what's important to MSAD27 and our realities as we go enter in good faith and negotiate. So it's just it's just food for thought. And right now our negotiation committee is Toby, Keith, Barry. We do have a vacancy. Although I don't know that we can have a vacancy. We had to put a 4th person there, but that would be a quorum. So I think we have to stay with 3. Am I right with that? I think so. We had added Jake. Jake wanted to be part of it, but I think if we added a 4th, it would be a quorum. So I think we'd have to stay with 3. So that's.
I think we'd add somebody in case one and alternate because it seems like really the only time Barry and I can be in the same room is this night. The rest of the time, it's only one of us at a time.
Okay. So we'll leave the vacancy.
I don't think I've ever been in negotiations with you in the same room, maybe once.
I remember a couple of times and it was long.
Yeah, I think it was your fault.
Very slow.
I think we should, I mean, having looked at some of these contracts, they have so much detritus left over. I think there's even reference to like where the teachers should park their horses. Because we just keep recycling the same contracts. It might not be a bad idea to clean them and just bring them down to what we need. Because we just add, right?
Yep.
Like these things are giant and probably not necessary to be that bad. So it might not be a bad idea to pull the contracts and take one model contract and see what kind of language we can get out because it's no longer pertinent or that's my thought. Because I feel like we go in and there's all this detritus that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
So what we could do is we could go through that, our team, and then when we have some suggestions, bring the committee together and say, this is what we think. Or do you guys want to be part of that process of elimination?
I'm okay with being CC'd on it. I would be content with that. I'm assuming you're not all like cuddling together. I mean, I imagine it's just an email. Just CC us, and I mean that way I got some idea of what's in there, and I'd like to see them too, so I can start seeing if there's anything there that I have questions about. So when we go in, we're prepared. I like you're right. We often go in there, and I feel like we're the only ones not prepared to be there.
We'll share a copy of the current contract, teacher contract, with you guys, and then as we look at different language, if we suggest something, we'll copy you in and we'll do that one. Perfect.
Thank you.
Good with this.
Move on to items of business, old business, Valley Unified Education Service Center.
And I think we could lump maybe A and B together because it's all pertinent. We do have a Valley Unified meeting. We tabled the January meeting just because honestly, I had no idea. I didn't know how to make an agenda for that meeting. I still don't. And we have a February 1 meeting. But I'm thinking that the heart and soul of that agenda and that meeting has to be conversations about what we're doing, how we're moving forward. Are we moving forward? Are we not? And just conversations about that. So the regional school project aside, and behind us, I think we need to have conversations now about, all right, so what are we doing? What are we doing separately, and what are we doing together as Valley Unified? I have a document that I prepared for the plan for the future document, and what I'm explaining in this document is it makes it very difficult to plan for the future when we don't know, what's currently in place, what we still want to be part of. So in that document, and I've shared this, with the Madawaska School Committee on Monday, their own version of this with their letterhead, and I will be with 33 as well. But it's, right now we're part of a strategic plan. That was a 10-year plan. I believe we're in year 3-4 with MSAD27 in Madawaska, and we have 8 priorities. And for the most part, the majority of those priorities are completed and or underway. I look at adult ed, priority 3. That's that's been done. Priority 4, shared administrative structure. We've done that. Priority 5, optimizing the tech center. Bringing new programming in and 8th graders. And so we've been working at that. Collaboration with UMFK and NMCC. We're working on some new things to expand opportunities. As Mr. Coletta explained to you earlier, that Pleasant Street Academy, as wonderful as it was, it became difficult for UMFK to keep kids pegged into that same model because there's so much more offerings now at the college, and kids want different things. They don't want to be cohorted in the same program. They want to have a little bit of flexibility. So that's underway as well as talks with Northern Maine Community College. Priority 8, optimizing use of technology. We've gone light years with our optimization of technology since March 16, which is amazing. So looking at those, we'd have to think about which of those are still important to us, which of those we still want to keep as a guiding light. Moving down to Valley Education Service Center, we have a lot of services right now that we currently share between the district superintendent, assistant superintendent, finance director, innovative programs and community outreach, curriculum coordinator, shared central office services, food director, health instructor services at the 8th grade CPE program, career instructor services. We have a unified Power School. So right now, when I log into Power School, which is our student information system, I see all 3 districts and I see all schools because that's been merged together. So we have a unified Power School that the state reimburses us for because we have an education service center. We have our unified Empower, that's our student learning management system. That's unified together. Our Tyler Technologies, which is our financial software and employee self-service, that is reimbursed by the state as well because we're unified. TimeQual Plus, we have a curriculum that's the same throughout the 3 districts. We share professional development and grant writing. So all of those shared services currently exist. And then we have our Valley Unified Vision goals, where we established 2-year goals last year. One of them was to create teams in school that focus on data to support our various school improvement processes. We have a focus on climate and culture, where we're examining the climate and culture at all times to figure out what works for us and what doesn't. And then we have these learning transform keys that our schools, all of our schools have done some asset gap analysis with to figure out, how we can move that needle towards transforming learning. So fast forwarding to the last page of that, as we plan ahead, I guess we would need to decide as a board, how we want to proceed with these shared things. Is it continuing as is with our current priorities, our current shared services? Obviously, our priority number 1, high school regionalization, that's probably not going to happen on a center school, as you will, but we could still use the 3 high schools to, for lack of a better term, digitally regionalize with opportunities. We know now that if a teacher can Zoom with kids from home and school, we can do that from school to school and have some success with that. So that might open up some doors. So do we stay with those goals and those shared services? Or in option two, are we looking to modify some? You know, some work for us, but some don't. And we need to go back to the drawing board about what works and what doesn't, specific to those. Or are we saying that those shared services no longer work for us? We need to, you know, we need to have our own planning. We need to have our own strategic plan specific to this district and these communities, and focus on those things specifically. So I guess I don't know how to help you unless I know what you want moving forward. And we don't have to answer that today, but that's just.
I don't think it'll be answered today, then.
Oh, no, for sure.
But I think that, we're gonna need a response at some point in time from our commissioner.
I believe so. And I have not received anything. And to be fair, I haven't asked either. I figured that they're gonna let us know as soon as they're ready to let us know. But that is the golden question.
I think we've been talking about doing this retreat for like a year.
Yeah, and I do have that on the agenda.
Yeah, well, I think they work well together. I think as a board, we need to have a sit down and discuss what we want and what we don't want. And I think the retreat would be a good time to do it. You guys,
I think right now would be certainly premature.
Oh, yeah.
To make any sort of decision without first knowing what the commissioner and the state board wants to do going forward. I agree with Toby. We definitely, this isn't going to be handled in a regular board meeting. My thoughts on it are we probably need to take a step back and just do some sort of independent analysis. Maybe we need a budget for it for next year, the next school year, have some sort of outside analyst kind of look at this and see where we've come from and where we are now. And what's our best step forward after that?
From a dollar perspective?
Not just from a dollar perspective, just from the efficiency and obviously what's best for the students in all of this. Because that's our number one priority, is to continue providing a stable learning environment.
Yep.
Anyone else have any comments?
We'll talk more about the retreat. I call it a workshop. Retreat sounds good, but.
it sounds a lot more fun.
Jake likes calling it a retreat.
What's that?
Jake likes calling it a retreat.
I think I'm just saying that because Jake's not here, but it's just for him out there watching at home.
Guess we'll move on to the standing committee.
You do have a list of standing committees, and I have identified vacancies that have been created by Jake and Kerr's departure. Last meeting, Isabel graciously accepted the vocational advisory role, and I'm hoping she's still okay with that. She didn't accept it, I kind of said, you should do this. But we do have vacancies for the negotiations committee, that fourth member who would be a substitute for anybody that could not make it. Policy committee, dropout prevention, attendance committee, and then educator effectiveness committee. So just to kind of preface that this year was weird because of COVID, so we didn't have really any committee meetings. But negotiations is more of a heavier role, especially during a negotiation. You can plan on meeting maybe 3-4 times throughout the negotiation process. Policy committee usually target at least 3 meetings a year. So that's usually the usual goal, 1 every 3-4 months, so 3-4 meetings a year. Dropout prevention is usually once a year unless we need to make it more. And then educator effectiveness is as needed, and that one hasn't been needed for quite some
I'll take that one.
And there was some talk at our last negotiations committee meeting of, and Doug's still here? Of connecting, like there was some talk of educator effectiveness when we were doing negotiations.
Yeah.
Do you think, I mean, if we decide to do it, then maybe it should just be a subset of the negotiations committee, because it seems to be tied very closely. Do we need a separate committee if we barely ever meet? I guess what I'm saying.
You just need a representative who can get invited to those meetings, by law. So we don't need it. I can roll that in there if you want.
It just looks better if we don't have an empty spot.
Okay.
Adam, do you see anything? Sure.
I was just gonna say, I can fill any vacancies that you think would be most beneficial to have someone. My schedule's pretty open right now.
Having been a recent graduate, maybe the dropout prevention attendance.
Sure.
Policy committee is really exciting.
That would be a good one for you.
If you want me to, I can.
And on the negotiations committee, I think if one of us three that are on it can't make it, we find a board member that to replace us. We can find a board member, we can call and say, hey, you can take my place, I can't make it.
As long as we have 2 people, I don't care. Just there were a couple of times where it was just me.
Yeah.
If that was, I don't, as much as I like fighting with union reps from Portland, it's
We'll
not
have
what I
a,
wanted to do.
we'll have a floor. Okay.
So that works. So we won't fill the last negotiations committee vacancy. We have Abby for policy, we have Abby for dropout prevention, and we drop the educator effectiveness rep, and we'll pull from the negotiations committee.
Move on to new business, retirement, resignation, etc.
I have no retirement. Oh, did we receive? No, we have not received a retirement. Did we receive a retirement notification?
It is, but, actually,
I can't remember. I think we received one yesterday, the day before, but I can't remember. It was an email. It wasn't a formal letter. I'll bring it to you next meeting, because I did request for a formal letter, so when I get the formal letter, so. No transfers, no new hires, no current openings. Well, we do have an opening, a running opening for the entire year for a speech pathologist, but that's the only thing that we have right now.
You want the school calendar?
Yeah, so you have a copy.
Because were we going to bring up the need for a full-time said,
That's going to be done in an executive.
okay, sorry.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. With school calendar, the first one that we're talking about is the current school calendar. And when we had the meeting, the emergency meeting when the pandemic began, the board did approve any changes to the calendar to be done without bringing it to the board. I've been fortunate enough to bring most of the changes to you in advance. But there was a change that occurred on December 16. We moved the workshop day to fit with a hybrid schedule. We had moved it from a Friday to a Wednesday, and I did not get board approval for that. But it was important that because we want to align those PD days, because we do have shared PD with other school districts. So I don't know if the board wants me to bring future changes to you. I won't abuse the privilege you've given me to make those changes when I need to. It's just that sometimes, things things occur and I'm looking ahead to the next board meeting and, you know, I just have to use my judgment not to call an emergency board meeting to have a change of a workshop day. So I don't know how you guys want me to proceed with this school year, but I did want to bring that to your attention if you want to change that.
I think for the most part, it's been working fine. I know, like, was it the 23rd, you emailed me about going from a half day to a half day to full day, whatever. And that was fine. I contacted Sarah, the vice chair.
Yeah.
Who was good with that.
And
I think it's just so we know, and it doesn't come from the public that, hey, what just happened?
And I think part of that was, families were planning on no school on a Friday, and then all of a sudden it was Monday, and it wasn't even like a week's notice.
Right.
And then I didn't know about it ahead of time, and so it kind of puts me in a crappy spot, or any of us in a crappy spot to try to be.
And we won't do that unless it's, you know, unless it's something that we didn't even realize and then it's last minute. And I'll try not to do last minute things like that again. I always want to give you guys information well in advance. I'm trying to do that more and more, not only just the chair, the vice chair, but the full board. Probably get 50 emails from me a day, and I want to continue that. So you're in the know.
Yeah, I mean, my issue is that it was short notice.
Yeah.
And when the board said we're giving you great latitude, I thought it was because if there was an emergency, and I mean, from my perspective, a PD day was not an emergency. And even an email would have been sufficient for me. I mean, I think it was just, I think we gave the latitude with the understanding that it was because, you know, we had this huge COVID thing and we needed to move all the kids one day and we couldn't do anything and this was the only day it was available. Then yes, I mean, we get it.
Yeah.
But a PD day didn't feel like an emergency.
Yeah.
So that was where my reaction. So, what?
And I'll try at least by email at first, and then, so it gives you guys time to say, well, wait a minute, I think we need to discuss this further.
Yeah, that's all I want.
Okay.
Then you can go back and try to set, or do an email.
Oh, okay. So can we go back to resignations? The retirement? Excuse me. I do have a retirement notification. This is from Mary Willette, who works out of the Chippy Center. I'm writing to inform you that I have decided to retire at the end of the school year. I think it's time for me to travel and enjoy my retirement. Please let me know if there's any paperwork to fill out. So if the board wishes to move to accept Mary Willette's.
So, second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Calendar 2021-22.
So I do have a draft of the 21-22 school calendar. It looks a lot like this year's school calendar, similar start date, similar end date. Whenever we're building the calendar, we always send a teacher survey out to make sure that we're getting that information. So you should have survey results in your packet as well. The first question that we asked staff was, which statement best fits your position on the school year calendar? And you can see the majority would like a later start in August versus an early end in June. So this calendar does reflect a later start in August. That goes with the majority of the teachers. Number two, to begin the school year, would you prefer one workshop day or two back-to-back before the first student day? The majority prefer two back-to-back. So we did build two back-to-back workshop days in the calendar draft. Number three is about Christmas. What is your preference on the last day before the Christmas break? And 51%, the majority say that it should be on Wednesday the 22nd. So that's where we plugged it in on the calendar. Number four is specific to collaborative team time, and this is if we're outside of COVID and back to quote unquote normal. What would your preference be for PD time? And the majority have chosen one early release a month. So we built that in as well. Question 5 and 6 are specific to the harvest break. And although although it was clear, I wanted to get just the elementary staff to weigh in. So you have a separate sheet here that asks a clarifying question just to the elementary staff. And that clarifying question is, specific to harvest break, rank the statement that best fits your opinion. And you can see that the majority of FKEF staff, you're looking at the blue bands, they fully support the 2-week harvest break. So they want to be on the same schedule as the middle high school. So right now in the draft, that's how we built it in. You can see the back to school date. We have 2 groups, group 1 and group 2. Fort Penn Elementary School falls into group 1 with CHS and VRMS, where they would start on the 23rd. The teachers would start on the 23rd and students on the 25th. And both schools would break for harvest per the preference of the majority of teachers. I like the breakdown in quarters. They're all exactly 44 days. That's amazing. Usually we have some discrepancies, so that worked out well. Everything else is pretty much the same as we've seen it before. We did not plug in an early release on November, and that's because it is a short month with the Thanksgiving break and also the Veterans Day holiday. So we plugged in a Valley Workshop Day right after that holiday instead as the PD option.
What are your thoughts on both schools having harvest break off? I know we've talked about, and the teachers have talked about how it was disadvantageous to the kids, to the younger kids, to come back for a few weeks, or start for a few weeks and then have a couple of weeks off, and then it was kind of like starting all over again.
Yeah.
Roughly.
I put out 3 drafts. One of them was what you see here. Another option that I provided was a 1-week elementary harvest break. So that second week of harvest, we would have called it fall recess or fall break. And that would have been, so the elementary would have gone for 1 week and then break for 1 week. And the survey results still came back with the majority of staff in favor of that 2-week break. And I think that's because it separates families. From an education standpoint, as an elementary educator, I would not have liked a 2-week break, only 4 weeks into the school year. I was a big believer in the first 10 days sets the foundation, and then you're off and running from there. I feel that the harvest break is a start over. So for me, on an education standpoint, I have issues with it, but I understand that on a family aspect and on a ideal travel schedule aspect, because of how things align up. Traditionally the families here count on it. This year is unique in where the elementary did not get that harvest break, and the feedback I got was they felt that stretch from August to Thanksgiving break was really long. They felt that was an extremely long stretch, which is why I thought maybe the 1-week fall break would have been a great, but I didn't get any takers. Well, I got some, but no.
You got a good chunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a close second.
Yep.
How did the other districts feel about the 1 week? I'm guessing Frenchville, no.
Frenchville would have, the majority would have liked that,
Really?
yes.
Madawaska?
Madawaska, the majority do not want harvest break at all. A clear majority, because they haven't had harvest for the elementary school in years. How many years ago?
Remember, we went 1 year, tried it, and they didn't like it.
So under the shared calendar, they're getting it?
What's that?
Under the shared calendar, are they taking an elementary school break or no?
Madawaska. Madawaska, right here, you'll see that their board approved this, and they would be starting in group 2, which is the elementary starting on the 7th.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
I move to accept the calendar.
Second?
Second.
second?
Yeah, I did, sorry.
Second by Ann, sorry. Any discussion? All those in favor? Next board meeting date.
So I put this just in case you guys did not want to wait until our next board meeting. This is actually our January meeting that, this was actually our January, February meeting that got moved up. So right now you're slated for, excuse me, your regular January meeting was January 25. We moved it up here. Your next meeting is only scheduled for March 8th. So I didn't know if you wanted to schedule a meeting between then, or if you're comfortable waiting for March 8th. Or if you just want to wait and see if we need a meeting, then we'll call one at that day.
I personally would like to wait and see, and maybe have one in February, but pick a date later.
Anyone else have that feeling? Or-
Well, we also have the
Oh.
next agenda item is the planning workshop, which is also right around those days,
Yep.
or potentially.
So that might be able to serve as a next meeting.
But that would be a workshop, not necessarily an official meeting.
Yeah, if we advertise it as a workshop with no voting, then it wouldn't be we still have to post it because you guys are all together, but there'd be no voting.
So I guess the question I would have is when are we, 'cause I don't remember. Right now, the plan is to go into hybrid next week. And then how long are we in hybrid before we go full on if we follow the plan?
2 weeks.
What's the date?
February 1.
February what?
1.
We want to shoot for like February 9th and adjust if needed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only reservation I have is if something comes up between now and when we go to full, I think we should probably have a talk. You know, if we end up with we have some sort of COVID issue in town or whatever, I mean, we're gonna have to have a discussion. That's why I was wondering if we could make it so they overlap, but it doesn't quite work out. Leave it at February 9th.
Either that or leave it up to Gary and then call a special board meeting.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
But I'm fine with February 9th for regular meeting.
Motion to set February 9 as our next meeting date.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Retreat.
Planning workshop. So I know you all have jobs and you know, so I know a weekday may not work for you, but I also know that snow's on the way, and Mr. Sibley and I got new sleds, and we need to be riding like the wind on weekends. So I didn't know if you wanted to target a weekend or if you wanted to target a weekday. I didn't know if you wanted half a day, and that could be a morning, it could be an afternoon, it can be a late afternoon into early evening. I didn't know what your thoughts were, but I did provide some dates that are open for me. Highlighting that obviously the weekdays are more open for me than the weekends, but those weekends are still available as well. So I thought we'd talk about that. And my thought was, prior to this meeting, having you all chime in things that you wanted to an agenda, and then I would build the agenda based on that.
Isabel, any preference?
I guess it all depends on what time it would be at, just because on some, like, obviously I'm in college, like I'll have college classes at night, on some nights, and then during the day I'm pretty open though, but it all depends on what you guys want.
The retreats that I've been to were always on the weekend and they're always in the morning. And you were done by noon. And after 12 o'clock, you had a beverage and pizza.
Barry, can you turn your mask inside out?
No.
Our phones have been lit up here for quite a while, and there's some upset.
What does it say? I can't see it from here.
I dress code violation.
I have to say something, I'm sorry, as the dean of students in this school.
You know what it says?
But Phones lighting up.
Really? Okay.
But at least it's been said.
I'll try to find another one.
Be it noted, the board member was not aware of what he was donning on his face.
Okay.
Fire me for like.
Do you have any preference?
Really fair and consistent.
I really have no preference. I'm in the same boat as Barry as far as, my experience with past board workshops or retreats. It was on a Saturday. A late afternoon, if the evening would be fine for me as well. I'm flexible.
Are you, Toby?
Oh, me, that's true, I'm talking. Sorry, I don't care. I got February 5 is out, like, of course, that day. Otherwise, I don't care. I'm not terribly excited about doing a weekend, but if we need to, I will.
Any of these work for me, and anything but Sundays really.
Probably the 10th, that Monday the 10th would not work for me, otherwise I can make almost anything work. Benefits of doing your business.
So pretty much accomplished nothing.
Well, we've eliminated 2 days, Gary. That's better than.
Yeah.
If we did it more towards the end of February, maybe even the beginning of March.
I
That'd
agree
be all
with
set
Gary.
for Saturday, and then-
I agree with Gary to make it later because there's a lot of stuff that's gonna happen between now and February 9. And we might have some different topics to talk about.
Just bear in mind that our interlocal agreement does call for a budget to be approved by March 15 for Valley Unified, with an emergency extension to March 30th. So I just want to throw that out there.
I think we need to address this, we need to have a direction sooner rather than later. Because we need to let our partners know what we're planning on doing, what we're thinking of doing.
What about this month, Ben? Do you have, what's your calendar like between now and the end of January?
I can make Friday the 22nd work. I can make Saturday the 23rd work. I can make Thursday the 28th work.
Is Friday the 22nd work for everyone? If we did January 22nd?
Okay. It's like the one day in the calendar.
Change it.
How about the 23rd? How's that looking for everyone?
You okay as long as you don't have the ski season that starts by then?
Yeah. I can make Thursday the 21st work.
That's next Thursday.
Next Thursday work for people?
What time, morning or afternoon? Quarter to 30, quarter to 1. I don't expect the 1 o'clock to last long. I could pop in after 1 o'clock. I don't know.
4 o'clock under.
We could do a 3 to 6 or a 4 to 7.
Well, as long as, like I said, I think I'll be done by 1:30. So we could do like 1:30 or 2.
Sarah?
I just question, are we gonna have enough information by then to talk about stuff, or is it still gonna be all this theoretical, we don't know, the stuff has been decided, or?
Well, I don't think I think the Board of Education set to meet again like February 2nd or 3rd. And then we'll have a more definitive answer on what's going on the Augusta end. I guess we'd almost have to wait until then.
I just say that we have a meeting on February 9, and then we decide from there. Our next meeting is scheduled February 9. And,
Hold off on the retreat for now, just schedule a board meeting.
And applicable, payroll, check the calendars.
So we'll put the retreat off again.
I'm trying.
So the other dates didn't work for anyone?
The February dates all well.
The 19th, 13th?
Hold on for me.
There's hesitation to have it on Saturdays because of ski season,
Okay,
and these dads want to attend me.
can't, not too many people.
Um,
I mean, Fridays, I mean, we've got the
The 12th to the 19th.
12th and the 19th. Anybody have any strong feelings about the 12th and the 19th?
well, I'm going to stick to it. We're having a scheduled meeting for February 9, right?
By the 12th and 19th, Barry, I'm telling you right now, my 12th and 19th, or by the 9th, my 12th
So
and 19th. are
what
probably-
month are you in on the 12th and 19th?
What's that?
You're in February?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Because
if we're going to have a meeting, I want it to be.
I guess what I'm saying is 4 days before I have to clear my calendar.
Pick a date.
I'm asking, but you're sounding like you don't want to until we get.
Well,
there. I just worry, because we put this off for a year.
Can we then go back and maybe hold off on the 9th meeting and say, let's pick the 12th as the powwow and then see if we want to do a meeting after that,
Board meeting after that.
a board meeting. The other day.
Well, we already voted on the 9th, so how about we just stick with that? Go with the 19th and play it by ear. Ben's gonna solicit responses from all of us as far as board topics or retreat topics. And based on what those topics are, maybe we'll have what we need at the time.
Can we set a tentative date for the 19th?
yeah, let's do that.
All right.
Do I dare ask a time?
6 a.m.
Say 3 to 4 o'clock.
My preference is 4 to 7.
I'd rather 4 to 7.
That means
Sarah?
Okay, motion to set board planning workshop for February 19th.
Tentatively.
second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Need a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
This one is specific to personal employment. Mr. Flett, I need you to stay. Mr. Duca, I need you to stay. Doug to stay. Lucy to stay. Actually, you're all. Got Steve.